Once upon a time, in the heart of an old kingdom, there was a village named Pendleton, a place where the days passed without much notice, where the people lived quietly, but with a deep sense of sadness that seemed to cloud the air. The streets were dusty, the houses aged and weary, and the people walked with their heads down, not because they were bad people, but because life had taken the joy from their hearts. In the corner of this forgotten village, tucked between the crumbling walls of an ancient house, lived a clockmaker named Tomas. Tomas wasn't a man of wealth or fame. His wealth was in his craft. He was a man who understood the mechanics of time. His hand was skilled, and his mind, sharp as ever, could create clocks that ticked precisely, marking each second with unwavering precision. But Thomas had a different dream. He didn't want to make ordinary clocks. He wanted to make something that could measure something much more elusive: joy. Thomas's shop was filled with clocks of all kinds. There were tall grandfather clocks that chimed through the night, delicate pocket watches that tick softly in the palm of a hand, and all sorts of timepieces that captured the essence of life. Yet despite his craftsmanship, there was always something missing. The clocks he made were admired, but they were not alive. Thomas had lived in Pendleton all his life, and like the others, he had seen how the village had become trapped in a dull, monotonous rhythm. The villagers moved about their lives, but no one ever laughed openly, and no one shared a moment of joy. They had all forgotten the power of happiness. Thomas could see this, and it weighed on his heart. But Thomas had a secret. He believed that time could be measured in ways other than hours and minutes. What if time wasn't the greatest thing to measure, but moments of happiness? What if, instead of counting time, a clock could count the moments that truly mattered? One evening, as Thomas was sitting in his dimly lit workshop, a strange letter arrived at his door. The paper was worn and yellowed with age, the ink fading but still readable. It was from his old mentor, a man who had taught him the craft of clockmaking, a man named Gideon. "Thomas," the letter began, "I hope this letter finds you in good health and spirits. I have heard of your work, and I know you have the potential to do something extraordinary. The world does not need another clock to count time, but it needs a clock that measures something more. I challenge you, Thomas, to build a clock that does not measure the passing of minutes, but the moments that bring true happiness. It is a task that will test your limits, but it is a task worthy of your genius. I believe you have the ability to create something that will change the world. Remember, joy is the true measure of time." Tomas read the letter over and over. The words filled him with both excitement and fear. Could he truly create such a clock? He had always been a man of logic and precision. But this was something completely different. The idea of creating a clock that measured joy consumed Tomas's thoughts. He spent nights alone, sketching designs, trying to figure out how he could build a clock that would not just measure the seconds, but reflect the moments of laughter, love, and joy. He knew that every happy moment needed to be captured in some way. The challenge was immense. Thomas understood the mechanical world, but this was a new territory. He struggled to design gears that could move in harmony with emotions, a system that could glow with happiness or hum in response to joy. The work was complicated, and Thomas often found himself frustrated. There were times when he doubted whether it could be done at all. But every time he thought of the villagers, their dull eyes and heavy hearts. Thomas pushed forward. He knew that if he could succeed, this clock could change everything. It could bring the village back to life. One fateful afternoon, after weeks of tireless work, Thomas completed his first prototype. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. The clock didn't just measure time, it responded to the emotions of the people around it. When laughter filled the air, the clock would glow brightly. When sadness lingered, it would dim, as if sharing in the sorrow. Thomas placed the clock in the middle of the village square, hoping the villagers would take notice. He didn't know if it would work, but he had to try. At first, the villagers paid little attention. They had grown used to the quiet sadness of the village. But then, one child began to laugh, a bright, innocent laugh as they played in the square. As the sound of their joy filled the air, something miraculous happened. The clock's face began to glow. The villagers stopped in their tracks, their eyes wide with amazement. Slowly, other people started to laugh, to smile, and to embrace one another. It was as though the clock had unlocked something within them, a deep, forgotten part of themselves that had been dormant for far too long. The clock didn't just measure time, it brought joy back to Pendleton. The people who had once walked with their heads down now looked up at the sky, their hearts light, their spirits lifted. For the first time in years, the village was filled with laughter, and the clock, Thomas's creation, was at the heart of it all. Word of Thomas's clock quickly spread to nearby villages. People traveled from far and wide to see this magical timepiece that could reflect joy. With each visit, the village of Pendleton became more vibrant. Thomas watched as his simple idea turned into a movement, a revolution of happiness. The clock had a ripple effect. People who had long forgotten how to be happy began to rediscover joy in the simplest of moments. The warmth of a friendly conversation, the beauty of a shared meal, the sound of children playing. The joy wasn't just in the clock, Thomas realized. The clock had merely awakened something inside the people. Soon, the news of the joy-filled kingdom reached the royal court. The king, intrigued by the rumors, sent an invitation to Thomas. The king wanted to meet the man whose clock had transformed an entire village and to learn how the power of joy could be spread throughout the kingdom. When Thomas arrived at the royal palace, he was greeted by the king, who was eager to hear about the clock. "Your creation has sparked something extraordinary in Pendleton," the king said. "I believe that it could bring peace and happiness to the entire kingdom. We want to make your clock the symbol of our land." The king offered Thomas a royal commission to create more of his clocks, to be placed in every corner of the kingdom. Thomas hesitated, knowing the challenge this would bring. But the vision of a kingdom filled with joy, a kingdom where people cherished happiness in every moment, was too powerful to ignore. With Thomas's clocks now in every town and village, the kingdom began to change. People started to focus not on the hours of the day, but on the moments that made life worth living. Villages that had once been quiet and somber were now alive with laughter and light. The king's court, once filled with tension and power struggles, became a place where kindness and compassion were prioritized. Thomas had given them a gift greater than gold, the gift of joy. Thomas had created more than just a clock. He had created a movement that changed the hearts of thousands. His work had brought an entire kingdom back to life. Years passed, and Thomas grew older. He had seen his clock bring light to places that were once dark. He had witnessed joy fill the hearts of people who had long given up on happiness. But the one thing Thomas knew was that his work would never truly end. The clocks he had created would continue to hum and glow, and in doing so, they would continue to remind the people of the kingdom of what truly mattered. As Thomas sat in his workshop one last time, reflecting on his life's work, he realized that happiness wasn't just a fleeting moment. It was a choice to embrace joy, to create it in the smallest moments, and to share it with the world. Thomas smiled, knowing that he had fulfilled his purpose, and with that, Thomas's final chime echoed through the kingdom, a lasting reminder that joy was, and always would be, the greatest treasure of all.